there's a project that I worked on, and my partner and he was working on one part of the project, I was working on another. Between the two of us, in that month, we did at least 2 years of work.
AI-assisted coding has made it so that anyone with an idea and the ability to communicate it can now build software. But are the resulting projects for real or just toys? To answer that question, I am joined by Matt Bernier, an independent product consultant and co-founder of letsvibe.org. With previous experience at companies like Twilio and SendGrid, Matt knows what it takes to build software that scales. We discuss how the simple act of planning can dramatically improve the quality of your vibe coding projects, how various models can be pitted against one another to find gaps early, and how tools like BrainGrid can be used to turn single sentence ideas into robust technical requirements. Matt's process highlights how leading vibe coders aren't just using AI to write code, they're using it to pressure test ideas, to find edge cases, and to propose robust technology designs, all before a single line of code is ever written. If you're ready to take your AI-assisted coding to the next level, this episode is for you. Let's dive in. Hey, Matt, welcome to the show. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to jump in. I was thinking about a good place to start today's conversation, and knowing you well and knowing what you're up to, I thought a great first question would be, there's this $1 million question sort of floating out there in the AI space right now, which essentially boils down to, can vibe coding be used to build quote unquote real software, right? There's maybe competing schools of thought on this, where some people feel like these are just toys. This isn't for real. If you want to build real software, you need to use traditional approaches. There's this other camp that says, no, there's something real going on here. And what we're seeing is a really important paradigm shift. I'd love to know where you land on that question and why.
Yeah, I think the answer is absolutely yes. And I think I can't take credit for this term, but I know I heard somebody else say that they prefer not to call it vibe coding, that they call it AI assisted coding.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that term a lot, because the reality is that, yeah, sure, sometimes I am like vibing my way through a project and doing things that are way outside of what I could do on my own. But, as a product manager, when I'm sitting with that hat on in a company, in a corporation, I've worked for, like you, multiple tens or hundreds of billions of dollars worth of company. I've been doing that with tech teams for over a decade plus, right?
Mm-hmm.
I've sat with engineers who have built things that I could never have built, couldn't even imagine on my own, and sat there and vibed my way through that conversation. And, we whiteboarded things, and I asked questions that were way out of my league, because that was my role. And I'm doing the same thing with an AI every single day.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is that it has context and it has information that I don't have, and it can answer questions for me faster than I can go look it up and learn all the nuances and everything else. And it also doesn't have the ego and the fear, and it doesn't have the the blockers of like, well, I don't know. Or, it's just like, yeah, let's do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so there are things where I'm like, well, can we do that? And it's like, yeah, we can do that. And I'm like, all right.
Yeah, it is. It is
And
a funny feeling that, like, to never hear doubt or hesitation, and sometimes that can lead to bad things if you're not planning appropriately. But I know what you're saying. Like, it's just
yeah,
always like, yes, let's jump in and do it, right? And it still
yeah.
blows my mind. Years in, I'm like, there's no way that should have been possible, and yet here I am using this amazing thing that I just built in like 2 hours, and there's just no way that I could have even imagined building this myself before.
And there's good and bad to that, right? So like just 2 days ago, so there's this whole thing with ClawHub, right, where they're building all of these bots that can talk to each other. And they built effectively like a claw bot Reddit forum where all of these bots are talking to each other and
Yeah,
chatting and
mold
doing
book.
all of this stuff. Yeah. And some security researchers hacked it in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And it was like, well, right, because everybody was so excited with these claw hub bots that they probably were just rushing and forgot to put in the config. Hey, remember security?
Yeah.
Right? Like just one line. Remember to secure things.
Hmm.
Because like when you're just setting stuff up and you're trying things on your machine locally, you don't think about security when you're local. When you're doing a proof of concept, you don't secure things, and when you're slapping stuff together, when you're vibing, you don't secure stuff. But when you're putting stuff out in the open, you need to secure it because someone's going to hack it. And when it gets really popular really fast, somebody's going to hack it. That's what happens.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, of course that got hacked because the very first thing that an app that gets 1 million visits a second or whatever, it's going to get hacked. And luckily it was a security researcher, but I guarantee you if a security researcher was in that data, there were a whole bunch of bad actors that were in that data
Yeah.
too. And so, you know, this is the thing is like whenever something is new, there are always going to be naysayers and there are always going to be, I don't know what the opposite, yes sayers. And you're going to hear the negative stuff because the people doing the positive stuff are too busy. They're busy building stuff. They're making money. They're doing stuff that they never thought was possible. Their heads down working, 12 hours a day with 5 cursor and Claude and Codex windows open. Yeah, cranking stuff out, right?
Yeah.
But you do need to remember that even though you can go so fast, you still have to have the fundamentals. And that's where, to go back to your original question, it's still coding and you still are able to produce code that's going to go out into the open. And so you still have to make sure that you are doing the things that are required, like having good security, having good UX, having all of the things that make sense. And then, yes, you can produce production level code that potentially millions of users use that
Hmm.
generates revenue that pays the bills.
Yeah. Well, I like the distinction though that you made between like vibe coding and AI assisted coding or agentic coding workflows. I've heard various terms
Mhm.
used, and I think the big thing that I take away and that I see maybe with others who have this sort of belief about vibe coding is that maybe they've opened Lovable at one point and fired off a few prompts and quickly built something in Lovable or Bolt.new or some of these other platforms, which by the way are great tools.
They're amazing. Yeah.
They're amazing tools, but there's there's more to it than just firing off a couple prompts, whether you're going to use one of those tools or whether you're going to
Mhm.
kind of jump into something a little bit more advanced, like running Claude Code in a terminal, getting into Cursor, some combination of those. And the point is that there's this whole other world of like agentic coding workflows and AI driven, AI assisted programming that when I first got exposed to it through a local group here that you're one of the organizers of several months ago, it just blew my mind. And ever since then, I've just been on fire with like
Yeah.
all these ideas and projects that I'm working on. It was basically the genesis of this podcast as well. So it's been amazing, and I look forward to jumping in today and lifting the curtain on a little bit of that. That we're going to jump in and show with some projects and workflows that you're doing in your world. And we're going to start. We're going to basically frame this conversation around a simple example. So I know you have this app that you've built, a very simple sort of demo app, to do app. And what we're going to do is we're going to jump into that app called Never To Do. And we're going to actually live build a new feature. And we're going to use that process to highlight some of the workflows and tools that you're using, again, in a production environment. So let's start by maybe just having you share a little bit about the app. I know you're going to start up a screen share, and we're going to ideate on this new feature and maybe bounce some ideas back and forth, and then we'll go from there. So why don't you take it away and get started here with the screen share?
Yep. All right. So Never to Do is literally this very, very simple to do app, and you add a to do item. You can view it. It has an audit log, so you can see that it was created. I did that because why not? And then when you close an item out, you get snow.
You get some
Yay.
snowflakes. Awesome.
Yeah. And then you can actually bring it back. And then you can see in the audit log that like I created it, I completed it, and then I marked it as incomplete. That's it. That's the whole app. There's really nothing else to it. Um,
Yeah, and I like
yeah.
this because, a lot of times when you get into AI assisted coding or vibe coding or whatever you want to call it, you're going to start very simple, just like this, right? So you
Mhm.
have an idea and you're going to sort of iterate your way through it. And that's exactly what we're going to do today. So we had talked about implementing a new feature in here where today in the app, to dos are just a simple list. But the idea we had talked about was, well, let's make it so you can group those tasks into projects or initiatives.
Yep. And just to show everybody like the code base for this, so I use Cursor and Claude, almost interchangeably sometimes, but like sometimes if I want to look at the code base, you can see this is the code base, and I did use Bolt to set it up, so you'll see there's a Bolt folder. I just was like, hey Bolt, make me a snow themed to do have
Yeah.
because the word nevar means snow in a couple different languages actually.
Oh, okay. I was wondering that.
Yeah, and I also liked like Never Summer is a
Yeah.
brand in Colorado, and so I
Yeah.
was
Big
kind of
Colorado
playing with
brand.
that. Yeah.
You made a
And
comment there I
so
want to zoom in on too, is you said, if I want to look at the code. And this is such an interesting thing to me as somebody who is a non-developer, technical person, product guy. I'm around software all the time. And I can sort of look at code and kind of make sense of it sometimes if it's simple enough, but I don't know how to write code. My abilities to read it are limited, and there's this really interesting discussion going on in AI right now of like, do you even need to look at the code? So
no,
speak to that. Yeah, give your perspectives on that, especially for somebody who might be watching who's like intimidated by
yeah.
looking at this.
So just for my background, I went to school and I got dual degrees, information technology, computer science. Um, I do use those and I have used those throughout my career. So I've been one of the more technical product managers when I was doing product management work in those bigger corporations. But I don't usually look at the code. Typically, I am talking to the AI and I am having a conversation with the AI as if it is a coworker, as if it is the developer and I am the project or product manager. I'm just talking to it. It's just another person at another desk through a chat app. And so I'm usually not looking at the code. Typically when I say I'm like looking at the code, what I mean is really looking at the file tree.
Yeah,
Or
the
I
project
am
structure.
actually like,
Yeah.
yeah, the project structure. I tend to have a plans directory like this when I'm just using an agent. And that was before I found the tool that we're going to talk about, BrainGrid. But I would have this folder here called plans, and I would do something like, so I can show you like quickly, you know, if we wanted to have a project grouping, uh, grouping for our tasks. Can you make a plan for this in the plans directory? So like I would do something like that with Cursor, right?
Yep.
So this is Cursor. It's an agent built into VS Code. VS Code is just an IDE for those folks that aren't as familiar. So if you've ever used IDE is just a code editor with a file browser on the side. So it lets you look at the code, and then they plopped this thing on the side here, which lets you
Yeah, totally. And yeah,
talk to the
for
agent.
anyone who is watching who's not comfortable or maybe familiar with these concepts, so IDE is Integrated Development Environment. There's VS Code is one of the bigger ones, but there's tons of these out there. And Cursor is kind of took this concept of an IDE and then layered AI into it. So what we're seeing Matt do here on the right hand side right now is simply having a discussion with the AI. And when Matt mentioned earlier, when you mentioned just talking to the AI and it'll manage the code, and it's helpful to understand the project structure and the file tree and tell the AI where you want things put. But ultimately, you can see here that it really is just like Matt said, right? It's just like having a discussion with a coworker.
Yeah.
So you've prompted it now and you've said, hey, I want a plan to do the following thing. And it has now generated this task project grouping markdown file inside of the plans folder.
Yep. And you can see it's really basic, right? It took my very basic prompt here, which is, one sentence. And I think it's really interesting to show this difference between like what Cursor does, what Claude does, and what BrainGrid does, because each one is a
100%.
little bit different because you have these different models. The models being like, it's very much like if you had developers from different schools or from different backgrounds coming in, they're all going to act a little different. They're going to have different, they were taught different, they've learned different. And so, Claude, taking with very little context other than the code that's in the repo and the sentence I gave it with my terrible typing and all of that, it just goes, okay. It assumes some goals, and based on what I gave it, looked at the project. It goes, here's some decisions and some questions that it has, and I can choose to answer these or not. And then it has some tasks. And so we could go through and we can answer these. I'm not going to for the sake of this right now. But this is actually new for Claude or for Cursor, is that it actually is doing these things now. When I first started using Cursor in 2024, I had to prompt it to say, what questions do you have for me?
Yeah.
Right. And even then, how are projects identified? Are project names globally? Like, it used to assume a lot of this stuff, and it would just, sort of spit this out. And it would figure it out as it went or whatever.
Yeah. Just make a bunch
Yeah,
of assumptions,
yeah. And
basically.
so like I could
Yeah.
go in here and I could say, make the plan more technical, make safe assumptions, and look at the model schema, like the database design, etc. Go, go, go. Right.
So
So
hurry
like,
up. Yeah. I want the
yeah,
feature.
so
Yeah.
I can do these things and it can go. Okay. So while
Yeah.
it's doing
I've
that,
seen this same trend too, by the way, of like just being asked questions more often by the AI. And I love it. And I still do this in certain contexts where it's appropriate, but it's always been one of my biggest like power tricks to people who aren't as familiar with AI is I'm like, invert it, instead of just asking the AI questions, tell the AI to ask you questions when you're setting
correct.
up a new project or something like that, whether it's a coding thing or strategic thing you're trying to figure out, like because the AI will invariably come back with questions that you hadn't even considered. So that's fantastic. The other
Yeah.
point that I really like
It's,
to make here is that having these plans is incredibly helpful for keeping the AI focused and doing the thing that you intend for it to do. So planning is absolutely critical. And the beautiful thing about it is you can, as we're doing here, use the AI to generate the plan itself. So you don't have to sit down and spend hours and hours thinking through a plan. You can literally just go have a discussion with AI. It will generate the plan. Then you take that plan and feed it to AI. So it's this kind of positive recursive loop that you get into.
and what's really cool is if you're not super technical, you can have it go create the technical plan, and then you can start a new chat and you can say, so like here, you can say, add this file to the Cursor chat, create um, user-friendly documentation for this technical plan so I can understand how this feature would work as a non-technical user,
I love
right?
that.
Then you can read that, um, you know, put this in the same directory. Then you can read that and you can say, oh, hey, this is not what I want. Go and
Yeah,
update the plan and the docs to make it so that it works this way.
exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you can ask for different versions of this. So give me the non-technical version, talk to me about how the feature works from the user's perspective, and so forth. And so,
Right.
yeah, so it's come back with a lot of useful information. And I think what you're highlighting here is one way to do this. And BrainGrid, which we're going to jump into next, I believe takes this to the next level.
Right. So you could be like, hey, I really want icons, not colors for the tasks. And
Yep.
it assumed you wanted colors, right? Can you please update both files? Right. And like, I don't really care what this is, but like you could be like, oh, look, I identified this immediately. And now you don't even need to see what the database design was. But because you had it give you the non-technical version as a non-technical user, you now look, it's going through, it's updating both files, and you can go back over here and you can see, look, oh, look, it's actually
Yes.
going and doing icon, it's doing this. You haven't changed any code, and you're not going to have to go through 100 files and tests and all this other
Hmm.
crap. You're only doing it in the plan. And it is so much easier to update a plan than it is to update an entire application. And so, um, what you're going to get here is, and this is the big naughty word in modern software development, but you are effectively doing a waterfall plan. And what's great about this, and this is coming from somebody who has fought the good fight for agile software development. I mean, I have like literally bled and potentially lost jobs fighting for agile software development. But with AI, you kind of want to go full waterfall. And the reason why is because you are being agile in the planning stage, and you're actually trying to get the project stage down to a series of small agile plans that you go and you build out, and then you build the next small agile plan, you build that out, and then you do the next small agile plan, and the plans become extremely like waterfall in the fact that you are agile in getting the plan itself. You iterate on that, and you're very agile in um defining the plan and iterating on it and getting it exactly the way you want it. And then you do the waterfall development and you build it out exactly to the plan.
Hmm.
Then you go to the next step. And so it's agile planning, waterfall development instead of like, instead of the alternative, which
Yeah.
is what we've always tried to do in these big software teams.
Got it. Yeah. Yeah. And I can see how that would be a bit of a spicy take in some circles, but your point is well taken there. And I think
Yeah.
the thing that I've been struck by as I've been on, like, jumped straight into AI when ChatGPT came out, but really over the last, I'd say 4 to 6 months have been very transformational for me as I've started to dive in deeper to these more technical workflows. One of the many things that I've been really struck by as part of that process is how much time people spend in this planning process. And by how much
Yeah.
time is all relative, right? I'm not talking like weeks, but I'm talking about just spending like a good 30 minutes maybe going back if you're building out a big feature set or something in your project, just spend 20, 30 minutes going back and forth, have a couple of different models look at things, ask questions from different angles, and come up with this markdown file that's like a really good plan that you feel great about. And you can read it and you can say, everything here sounds good, let's go. And then you feed that plan to whatever AI is going to build it. And that just saves you so much time and back and
Yeah.
forth. You're burning less tokens, you're getting to the feature quicker. And ultimately, in some of even my more technical projects that I'm working on, through this kind of planning and process, I'm able to go build like large feature sets in like a single session, an hour or two of time. And what I've built would have probably before taken one or two developers like a couple of weeks to do, which is just
If
mind
not,
blowing to
yeah.
me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a project that I worked on. It was November of 2025. And my partner and he was working on one part of the project, I was working on another. Between the two of us, in that month, we did at least 2 years of work.
Yeah. Yeah. It's insane. So talk to me about what we're doing here. It looks like you've now jumped over into a terminal and
Yeah, so
you're maybe just having Claude Code kind of do the same thing to get a different perspective on it. Am I understanding correctly? Or
that's
it's something
exactly
else?
what I did. I gave it
Okay.
the same prompt. I did add one little thing, which was ignore the plans that exist in there already. So I didn't want it to pick up the plan that Cursor did, just because I wanted it to be a fair comparison, because Claude has access to the same code because it's on my machine.
Yeah.
And so it would pick up that plan and cheat effectively. And then it goes, okay, but because I'm a super happy helper, I'm going to tell you what the difference is between the two.
Mhm.
Because I did see that there was one there, and I am a really good helper. See how good of a helper I am.
Yes. Claude,
And
very
so
eager.
it
Yes.
it is, and it really wants you to use Claude and not Cursor, because
Yes.
it's like, hey, I identified that you're spending money with someone else. Please come and
Yeah.
spend money here instead. So it did that, and that's great. Okay, so you can see this. We'll go and we'll pull up the other plan, and you can see that also, like, there's a difference, right? So this is what I wanted to show. So before, we just had the overview and we had some tasks, and I scrolled very quickly. And then when I told it to give us a technical plan, it also gave us the database stuff. But on Claude, when I told it to do the plan, it gave us, current state. It gave us the data model. It gave us a couple of other things, right?
Hmm.
And now it might have cheated and it looked at the other plan, even though I told it not to. That is probably on me for not creating like a truly scientific example, like with double checkouts of the repo and whatever. But it also gave us risks. It gave us, a couple other things. This is the models being slightly different. This is
Right.
probably not a
Right.
perfectly scientific example. Okay,
No, but I
that's
think
all I
this is a
wanted to
good
show you
this is
there.
a good illustration of like, and
Yeah,
there are, a million varieties of this, but having different models look at your plan to give their perspectives is one thing. Having the same model look at your plan multiple times can even yield
yes,
different results. I've found I'll have Claude Code generate a plan, and then I'll start a new Claude Code session and say review this plan, and
yeah,
it'll identify holes. So you can, like, even with
yep,
the same model, you can do that. And then the other thing I wanted to mention there is you can also have the same model just with different prompts. Hey, look at this from a technical perspective, security, UX, UI, and so forth. And so it's just the broad idea here, though, is getting like multiple sets of eyes, so to speak, on the plan.
absolutely. Well, and just I'll share one thing that's really great is you can use like agents with like Claude. And there's some great agents for like a backend architecture agent, or if you have like a security agent, if I could type. Um, so see if I can get search to work here. So like having a security agent go through and doing like an application security or something like
Yes,
that
I love it. They have a
to
security division here, a whole
yeah,
division
so you can
doing it.
actually like use a really good prompt that actually like has gone through and told Claude, these are all of the very specific things that you need to look at from a
Yep.
security perspective when you look at this. So you're not even giving it like, the generic like 2-line, hey, you're a security, you are an application security tester. Go look at my code. You're saying like, this is everything you need to be thinking about, and only this when you look at the code, right?
Yeah. Yep.
And then it'll go and give you like a full report and also a task list. And then you can go in and then go make those changes. That becomes really, really important. And I can give you this link if you want to share that.
Yeah, I'll share that in the show notes. I think there's like a whole discussion we could have about different agents
Absolutely.
and how to plug those into your environment and what they do. But for now, we'll stay higher level on it. The broad point there is all of these agents are essentially markdown files that you're going to store, and then like it's basically a prompt, like you said,
Yeah,
but they're highly
exactly.
detailed, and it's giving the AI model, which is incredibly smart, incredibly capable, but needs that context and guidance. So these agents are basically baking that context and guidance and saying, here is exactly what I want you to look at, which is
Yep.
really cool and can really supercharge your planning process.
Yep. And you mentioned like coming back, like having a new like instance of the agent coming back. It's very much like if, like in college, you were working on your term paper and you set it down and you come back like 3 days later and you pick it up and you're like, oh, look at that spelling error. And look at, oh, I forgot about this whole topic. The AI models are very similar in that way. It's almost like when you come and you start talking to the model, it's like you entered the brain of the model from a different angle. It's
Hmm.
not really a database. I hate to say this, but it's almost like a brain. It's not a brain, but it can act like that, where it's like, if you're having a bad day and you go work on your term paper, you're not going to do the best work. Um, or like, you ate something funny, or, you were distracted a little bit. The AI doesn't get distracted, but when you enter, at 12 p.m., and then you come in and you make a request at 2 p.m., you're going to hit a different part of the model.
Yeah,
And,
yeah. Yeah, it's
and so,
probabilistic, right? It's
yeah,
it's not
it's exactly
deterministic,
that.
right? And you can
Yeah,
see
it's
this even in
probabilistic.
something as simple as ChatGPT. You can go into ChatGPT and feed it the same exact question 2, 3 times. You're going to get a slightly different answer every time, and
Yeah,
so that
the
just
the wording
scales
will be
up.
different. Yeah,
Yeah,
the wording will be different, the how it formats the answer is different. Like, generally, the response is thematically the same,
hmm,
but it's gonna be, just slightly different, and so sometimes you actually can get a little bit of gold out of that, even if the way that it formatted the answer had you read it slightly differently and gave you an idea. Sometimes that is where the gold comes from. And
exactly.
so
Yeah,
that's why having it come back and do that is good. And
yeah.
and I will take a plan and go just paste it into ChatGPT and go, what do you think?
Yeah, a hundred
Think
percent. Yeah.
yeah.
So let's zoom back out here. So what we've done so far, we have this app, very simple. We want to add a feature to it. We went into Cursor. Showed how you can use Cursor to generate a plan. You then went into a terminal with Claude Code, had it generate a similar
Yep.
plan. Both had their own nuances and differences, as we would expect. And so, what's next? I see you've got BrainGrid
Yep.
up here. And as I understand it, this tool is really designed, like I said earlier, to kind of supercharge this planning process.
Yeah, it's amazing. So what and like full disclosure, I actually worked with the founders of this back in my Twilio days, which is like a decade ago. Reconnected with them through a friend who was like, "Hey, you're using a tool. This sounds a lot like this BrainGrid thing." And then I got introduced to him and I was like, Tyler and Nico, yeah, of course I know these guys. And then
Yeah.
we got connected and started talking to them. And while I was talking to them, I quit using the other tool, signed up for BrainGrid and started using it and haven't stopped, because what they've done is just kind of amazing. Um, so what it does is that when you connect your repo to it, it creates these 5 documents. And these documents are basically like it goes through and creates an overview of your project for itself. So like the code base summary, it's a full report that it gives itself about your project. And
So you
so
basically
like
you
I'm not
link this up with your GitHub. You got to have your project up on GitHub, which is
yeah,
something we'll gloss over for now. But just know that it can't just be local. So you load it up to GitHub, simple enough to figure out, and
yep,
then you sign up for BrainGrid. You make that connection to GitHub, and now it's able to look at your entire repo and kind of analyze it and produce documentation and various kind of analysis documents based on what it's seeing.
yep. And it does this all on its own.
Love it.
So you don't have to tell it to do this. And so what it does is it uses this for its own context. So the same way that Cursor does it for itself or Claude does for itself, it just does this in a very highly detailed way so that when you go to BrainGrid and you do the same prompt that we just did for, um, instead of saying make the plan in the plans directory, I'm going to give it the same prompt that we gave to the other agents. Um, I'm actually not going to fix the grammar.
Just
Um,
just give it
just
the
make it
raw,
fair.
really basic prompt here, right? And we're going to
Yep.
see what it comes back with. There might be real
And
cases where you want to give it more detail in that initial prompt, but I love this demo because what it's showing you is how simple it can be. Like it literally can be as simple as just saying, hey, I want to implement new AI features in my app, right? Like, what can we do? And now it has your entire existing app as context. It can go analyze what you're already doing and give you an answer that's rooted in that specific implementation, which is awesome.
Yep. So they took my thing and they wrote my first chat message for me. And
Yeah, yeah.
so
They just did some prompt optimization behind the scenes, which
yeah,
doesn't
and
shock
so
me.
they paste yeah, not
Yeah.
at all. And so they pasted that in and it goes, okay, I'm gonna look at this. So it's going through and looking at my files. It's also looking at the files that it created. And so while it's doing this, I'm gonna show you another prompt that I gave it because this does take a minute. Um, and so we're gonna do like, the little bit of movie magic here. So we did this with a friend. And so he said, what if we wanted to do like an inspirational quote, whenever you completed a to do? And I was like, okay. So we put that prompt in and it created this requirements doc. And so the idea here was, it creates this markdown file and they have it set up so that it'll render the file and make it pretty. And you can go in here and you can look at it. And so it creates an overview, a problem statement. It actually writes functional requirements for you, like how it's going to display, where it's going to get the data, all of that. The other thing that it'll do is it'll actually write technical requirements. So this is so much more detailed than what Claude or Cursor are doing by default. So I don't have to tell it to do these things. It also is already thinking about the user experience. So what's going to happen in the UI. So it's getting the back end and the front end. It's handling all of like the error cases, which is really important because these are the things that are going to end up biting you. And you're going to have to go through like when you're testing and you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think of what happens when that fails. Okay, now I got to go
Hmm.
back and recode it, right? Um, it's going to handle acceptance criteria. So what is the AI how does it know when it's done? Which is really important. Not only that, but on the display, on the visual, on the error handling, on the integration with the task, what is not in scope. So don't freelance. These things are like, don't even ask me about these things. These things
Right.
we're not doing. This is the complexity that we're not worried about. So don't worry about doing any of this stuff at all. And so this is just the requirements doc. Um, Now, what's really interesting is that we, you can go and you can build tasks from this. So once it's actually created the requirements doc, you can tell it create the tasks from this requirements doc.
Very cool.
And
So it
so,
added a bunch of tasks automatically. It inferred those from the context, and then in addition to that, it looks like it's giving you the ability um, to add additional ones if you want to. So I
yeah,
really
so
like this because what they're doing is obviously they've probably spent a ton of time refining their own prompts on the back end to
mhm.
basically optimize those to give you deliverables that are highly useful. And the other thing I like is just the UX polish that they've put around this.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it's just you can see just a friendlier way of working than being inside of Cursor and trying to read raw Markdown and so forth. So depending on your preferences, that might be worth something to you as well.
What's really great too is like on that project I told you where we did like 2 years of work in a month, we had a non-technical product manager and our salesperson who were actually getting feedback from investors and customers. They were able to come into BrainGrid and take that feedback, put it into BrainGrid as quotes and with screenshots, and then work through with BrainGrid to create the requirements docs.
How to make that
And so,
actionable and yep,
yeah, they didn't have to have any context of the code. So the
love
other
it.
thing that's really nice. Okay, so we're back to our project grouping. The other thing that BrainGrid does is I gave it one sentence, right? it starts asking the same questions that we started to get in that markdown file, but it makes it in this really nice form. So I'm going to ask you these questions, Jason. So how should projects relate to to-dos? Should every to-do belong to a project, or can to-dos exist without a project? You tell
I
me.
think to-dos can optionally belong to a project, or they can be standalone.
Okay. And then what features should projects have?
Let's keep it simple. Name, description.
That's it.
Yep.
Okay. Projects be displayed. How should they be displayed in the UI?
Let's go with collapsible sections.
Okay. And then should users be able to move to-dos between projects?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah, drag
So
and
yes,
drop.
drag and
Yep.
drop. And then should project changes be tracked in the audit log?
Yes, why not?
Okay. And then would you like to see project level statistics?
Sure. Like so many like that's the thing here that's asking these questions, and these are all things that you're like, oh, I wouldn't have thought about that, right? So perfect illustration why this planning process is so valuable.
Okay, so we'll just submit that. This thing blew my mind. I had a mobile layout thing where I had a mobile um, UI kit that I was using, and I had made a request for a breakpoint. They were 30 pixels different, and BrainGrid caught that and goes, "Hey, your request versus your UI kit are 30 pixels different. Which one do you want to
Amazing.
use?"
Yeah.
And I
Those
was
little
like,
UI things can consume so much time too, trying to
"Whoa!" And I knew that Claude would sit there and like try to actually give me both
yeah.
on a 30 pixel difference. And I was like, BrainGrid, you just blew my mind.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's
thank
amazing.
you
It's
for finding
amazing.
that.
Yeah.
Right. And
Yeah,
so,
we are running tight on time,
yep,
unfortunately. You and I could definitely do a part two, but let's go high level here. So BrainGrid, I'm sure does a lot more that we're not going to have time to get into,
yep,
but at a high level, I think talk to me about where you would go from here. So I know that BrainGrid has some kind of Kanban like taskification. I think there's a command line interface that you can then
yeah.
integrate, and it's maybe going and
So
grabbing tasks. Just talk to me again, high level, about where you would go from here.
let's just do this with the inspirational quote one. What I would
Yep.
do is I'd go back to Claude and I would go build. So I have the BrainGrid CLI that I installed, and I would say rec 2, which is the design, the title from here.
So sorry to
Um,
interrupt, but that build command is BrainGrid. That's tied to BrainGrid.
Yeah, so it's actually it's so BrainGrid has a CLI that is
Yep.
very easy to install. It's in their docs, and you go to your command line, you paste in a code, a command that they give you in
Okay.
your terminal, and it actually installs itself to Claude. Um, and you can also tell Cursor how to use it. And then in Claude, you get the slash build, but in Cursor, you can say use the BrainGrid CLI to get rec 2. And then
Amazing.
what it does is it actually allows it to make a call to BrainGrid to get the tasks
To go
down.
pull all the plans and
Yep.
everything you put together.
And it'll go pull this information like this, and it'll pull all that information. And so now I can say, go get rec 2. And the build slash build is just a built-in prompt that tells it what is going on. Um, oh, so I hadn't actually linked the project. So it's going to go and link the project really quick. So it
That's so
found it
amazing,
for
by
me.
the way. Like you
Yeah.
didn't link the project, and it's not just like throwing an error at you, but it's like, oh, the project isn't linked. Let me go take care
Yep.
of that, which is just like a microcosm, I think, a great
Just
microcosm of
beautiful.
why these like agentic flows are just getting so good, because they can
Yeah.
identify problems and just keep iterating through and solving those problems for you, instead of you banging your head against the wall trying to figure out all the different reasons
Right.
why something isn't
Yeah.
working.
Cause it could have just been like, too bad. And it
Yeah,
was like,
aired
oh, hey,
out,
by the
no
way,
no information about why, and now you spend 30 minutes or an hour trying to figure out what's going on or something, right?
right.
Like maybe in this case it would have been simple to figure out, but this same concept applies across all kinds of different things that you get into in AI.
So it's going to explore the code base. It's going to look at that requirement. It's going to pull down the tasks. It's going to start working on those tasks, and it will keep them up to date as we go. And, you know,
And then I think BrainGrid also
good to
has
go.
like like a view that you can go to that basically shows, like you can have all of your different tasks kind of laid out in, like, yeah, this view here.
Yep.
So you can imagine how you could spend a couple hours one afternoon just hammering on BrainGrid on your project and coming up with a bunch of different ideas, breaking
Yep.
all of those ideas down into really detailed plans, breaking those plans down into specific, tasks, and then basically go into your command line, whatever Claude, Cursor, whatever you're using, point it at BrainGrid and say go, and then come back an hour later and like have your mind blown about everything that's
Oh,
built.
absolutely. Yeah, you can
So
go
it's
and have the
amazing.
recs all set up and not even like have it build the tasks yet. You can just have the recs set up. Um, and so that you just have the requirement docs made and say, hey, Claude Cursor, go pull requirements, and make the tasks as you go. And there's just 100 of them in there. Um, go work through them and come back, and then you look at this, and 50 of them are done, and you're like, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, keep going. And you come back, and it's just you can have it
amazing.
like a
Yeah,
different branch for each
amazing.
one or whatever. It's awesome. Yeah.
Well, Matt, you and I have bumped up against our time here. We both got to go pay the bills, so we're going to have to wrap up for today. Would definitely love to have you on again in the future. Before we conclude, for anyone listening or watching who may want to connect with you, learn more, any resources or anything like that that you want to share or plug, have at it.
Yeah, I was just gonna say this QR code right here, best way to get to BrainGrid. And this is just my links page, but there's a link at the bottom to get to my website and to find me. And there's a link on this page to get to BrainGrid really easily, and a couple of other tools that I use, and some information about me. So yeah, and feel free to reach out, ask questions. I'm happy to help. And Jason, I would love to chat through like some of the setup stuff I've done and anything else if I can be helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, everyone, you can see the website there, mbernier.com. Hopefully, I pronounced that correctly.
Yeah.
And Matt, really appreciate it. For anyone listening, Matt's doing amazing things. If you happen to be in the Denver area, what actually plug the local meetup real quick for anyone listening in the
Yeah,
Denver area.
it's letsvibe.org. I will actually pull that up right now. I'll share my screen again. So
So
your
Matt and
screen.
his friend Eric organized this amazing AI group here in the South Denver area. So if you happen to be in the neighborhood, definitely come check that out. Really amazing group. People in that group doing incredible things with AI. It's been so inspirational to me, and so love that you guys do that. So yeah, would love to have people come join us there as well. So Matt, again, thank you for spending some time with us today. It's been super insightful. I've learned a lot just by watching you, and I look forward to putting some of these things into practice, and hopefully our listeners do as well. So thanks again.
Yeah, thanks, man. I always enjoyed talking to you. And I mean, you gave me a great idea for one of the repos, just setting this up. So I appreciate that as well. And
Awesome, man. It's all about
you
the
know,
conversation, right? Like you said earlier, that's
absolutely,
where the
man.
gold comes
Yeah,
from. So
anytime. And
cool.
let's do it again. This
All
was
right,
great.
sounds good. Have a good rest of your day,
All right.
Matt. Thanks again.
You too.